I, 36 million, am a gigging musician and singer. My dad, 74 million, always wanted to be a musician, and as a result crosses major boundaries when it comes to wanting to be involved in my career. One day, he calls me up and tells me he wants to record his first original song and is looking for a vocalist. I do everything I can to let him know that I'm not interested and that he should go on Craigslist or to local opens mic to meet people who might be interested in helping out. He kept digging and digging, and I eventually said yes. I went back and forth with my therapist on this. She encouraged me to maintain my boundaries and not do it, but I was too weak and caved, with my ultimate rationale being, what's the worst can happen? It's just a song. What's the worst that can happen? It's just a song. Let's remember that going forward. My dad doesn't send me any lyrics or even the rough demo until 3 days before we record. That didn't bother me since I'm good enough of a session singer to plow through it quickly, and it wasn't like I was expecting for anything my dad writes to have any complicated vibratos. However, when I read the lyrics, the song is clearly about some sort of previous love he had in his younger life and wanting her back. The only previous relationship I knew my dad had was with my biological mom. He left her when I was 9 to be with the woman he was currently with at the time of this song recording. So I'm reading this shit and I'm like, is this about my mom? Is he making me sing a song about her? What the fuck is this? I put that out of my head because obviously songwriting doesn't have to be literal, so whatever. I record the song in the studio my dad rented, and it's a disaster. We start 8 hours late because the engineer had another commitment. My dad also brings himself and his friends into the recording booth, which is like, no, you don't do that. He also is being passive-aggressive and rude to the engineer. I do about 5 takes, would have been 3, but my dad kept dropping his cane in the booth, and that was it. I left the session thinking that would be the end of it. 1 month later, I'm at work. At around 12 p.m., I get a text from my dad that says, "Looks like I'm getting tossed out. Can I crash at your place for a little bit?" Obviously, I'm stunned and try to call him, but he doesn't pick up. I tell my brother and sister about this, and they said they all got the same text. My brother said yes, he could stay for a few days, but we had no idea what the context of this text was and what the situation is. He won't call any of us back. He then sends a text that just says, "Looks like I'm getting a reprieve. You're off the hook." So we're all like, what the fuck? We assume he and his GF had a fight and then cooler heads prevailed. So that's the end of it, right? Nope. The next day he texts us to tell us his Jeep is broken down on the highway. He tells us he was on the way to my brother's house and the transmission blew. I asked my brother if he knew Dad was on his way, and my brother had no idea. We again have difficulty getting in touch with Dad, so I had to have him send me a tracking pin from him, and I found him at a rest stop on the highway. I called AAA and him tow his car to my brother's, and I drove him down. My first question, obviously, was what the fuck happened. "Well, son, remember that song you recorded?" "Yeah." "Well, it was about my first high school girlfriend. Man, I was in love with her. She was the love of my life, and lately I just can't stop thinking about her." "Cool, so the mother of your children wasn't the love of your life, good to know," I thought to myself. Apparently, after he posted this song to his Facebook, his old HS flame just happened to add him as a friend just hours later. MHM. So they got to talking, and as my dad put it, it got a little bit out of hand. So his longtime girlfriend finds these messages, is devastated, and kicks him out. So I'm driving my dad home to my brother's house, and it's like a 2-hour ride of me just gritting my teeth and trying to not tell him how disgusted I am with him. Not only for being unfaithful, but for the fact that he was just gonna show up at my brother's house completely unannounced. My dad can't walk on stairs, so my brother had to take all the furniture in the upstairs guest room, move it into the downstairs den, and then take all of that furniture upstairs again with like 3 hours notice. When I drop him off at my brother's house, He calls my sister on FaceTime so he can explain the entire situation to everyone. During this conversation, he shows zero remorse. He says his GF would have never known about this had she not been snooping. He tries to joke about it by turning to me and saying, "Remember when your mom got mad about finding out when you had parties at her house in HS without telling her because she went snooping?" My sister aptly responds, "Yeah, that does sound like an excuse a 17-year-old would make." My dad ends the call by letting us know that he's happy and can't wait to start a new adventure. And oh yeah, he's still talking to this new woman. So, all of are at a loss as to what to do. My brother is overwhelmed with anxiety and can't have my dad stay there for long. My sister drives 4 hours to meet up with me so that we can confront my dad and tell him he needs to figure out a new living situation because he can't stay here. I ask him about his finances and he won't tell us how much he has in retirement or SS. He just jokes and says, "I can maybe afford $100 a month in rent." He says maybe he can rotate living in each sibling's house every 4 months. We tell him, "Are you out of your goddamn mind?" My dad promises everyone he'll figure something out, but time goes on and he does nothing. One Thursday night, he runs out to a nearby town to run some errands. In the process, he drops his phone out of his Jeep Wrangler, the doors were off, and my brother has to, on a work night, pull up Find My Phone and drive 40 minutes out to where he dropped it. My dad then decides to go out to see his new lady, who lives about 2 hours away, where they will be meeting in person for the first time since HS. He says that she's going to help him find a new place since she had helped seniors transition in her past career. My dad returns home to my brother's place the next morning. My brother asks if they made any progress on finding a new living situation. My dad says, "No, we kinda didn't get much done." He then makes this comment, "Don't you think it should be illegal for people to have FB profile pictures that are 20 years old? Have you ever seen the movie Shallow Hal? For those who don't know, Shallow Hal is an early 2000s comedy that's about a superficial dude learning to love a fat woman." My brother finally flips. Aside from the fact that's a stupid, insensitive joke, all we could think was, did you just torch your entire fucking life and leave your GF for a woman you've never seen in person and think she's too old and fat? My brother tells him that he needs to get out of his house today. My brother goes to my mom's house and collapses into a pool of tears. He is a broken man and a complete wreck. My sister and I look for nearby motels he can stay at, and we find one with a smoking option because, of course, he has to have a smoking option. We book him for a week, and my dad says he'll start packing. My brother's wife is still at the house and trying to help him pack and get out, but my dad just wants to sit on the patio on his iPad for some reason. She keeps politely nudging, but he refuses to move. So she goes up to the bedroom window where she can look down at him from the window. Her smartphone has a great zoom function, so she zooms in to see what he's doing on the iPad that is so important. She zooms and zooms and zooms. And what does she see? She sees my dad looking at an online vibrator store. Let me repeat that. His 36-year-old son is at home, crying in his mother's arms, and he is just chillin' on the patio, looking at sex toys for his new friend. My sister-in-law, who is a rock star, flips and puts all of his shit in his Jeep and tells him that she loves him, but he needs to go now. So he reluctantly does. Later that night, my sister texts him and tells him exactly what she thinks. She's disgusted by him and that this entire situation has reopened the traumatic wounds of him cheating on our mom approx. 30 years ago. He shows zero remorse and says he thinks he handled the divorce just fine. He didn't. I text him something similar, though a little nicer and measured. Though I certainly don't blame my sister for her tone at all. My brother and sister cut off ties completely. I go for like a day without talking to him, but then I cave and tell him I'm going to find a place for him to live. During discussions with his ex, I found out he makes more than enough money to afford independent living, though it would tight. Within days, I found him a retirement community and we signed the lease a day later. Once he found a place he loved, he suddenly remembered all this additional monthly income he had. Once that was completed, he drove up to stay with his new lady for the next few days until he could move in. He calls his ex and tells her that he's sorry, never meant to hurt her, and that he's been staying at a motel with two of his children not talking to him. The ex feels sorry for him and tells him he can come back and they reconcile, which she has done twice since kicking him out. Just like the other times she asked, he says no, he does not want to get back together. Of course, he lied here. He was not calling from a lonely motel, he was with his new lady in her nice Plymouth house. Through communications with us, she finds out this is a lie and calls him out. All my dad does is send me a text to tell me that us kids shouldn't be divulging personal information to his ex. Of course, no apology. So he moves into this new place. And just like the free ride he got from my mom, and the woman he left her for, this new lady arranges for all of his shit from his previous house to be picked up and brought to this retirement home. Oh, and she buys him new furniture with assembly included. I arrive to see the new place, and as I'm opening the door, he says, "Oh, by the way, my new lady friend is here." Oh, lovely. I'm so emotionally ready for this. She's a complete dud, and one of those spiritual life coach anything but a real therapist types. But I grit my teeth through meaningless pleasantries. My dad is still with this new woman, living comfortably in a cushy new retirement home. Meanwhile, the woman who stayed by his side through chemotherapy treatments is devastated and broken. Me and my siblings are living through the trauma of the divorce and are all in therapy trying to sort this out. During this whole ordeal, I was deathly afraid of my dad becoming homeless because he made it seem like he had no money. I even ended up crying hysterically at my desk at work to the point my boss had to console me. And even though it's hardly the worst part of this whole story, the most personally damaging thing to me was how he once again crossed a boundary with my music career to pressure me into doing vocals on a song that was essentially a way to woo someone he was planning to leave his current GF for. After decades of boundary crossing as it relates to music, he somehow finds a way to cross a boundary so huge I didn't even know it existed. I don't know if there's a moral to this story. However, it was nice to know that in times of crisis, my sibling and I could band together and be united, rather than fighting amongst ourselves. And I do wonder, had I been firm with my boundary and never sang that awful fucking song, if things would be different right now. Story 2, I 20 million got my entire life crushed and tossed around because of my mother who treated me like I was a choice and cheated on my father as well. But not only that, she's involved with criminals as well. When I was around 5 years old, my father was always very aggressive and he wouldn't mind beating me as a kid if I did something wrong, and I would always run to my mother for safety. And I would be saved. I wasn't aware that my safe zone would soon become my danger zone. My father would often bring home his nephews to drink, and he would just start talking about politics and informative stuff after that until he fell asleep. One day, my father met one of his old employee that he helped to get work as a kid who is called Kishan, who had lots of debt. And the debt collectors were out to kill and sell his body parts to get their money back. My father helped him get work in his business. And my father paid off his debt to the debt collectors. Kishan met my father and started coming to our house more often, and he was the one who was bringing the alcohol for my father, and sometimes Kishan would drink so much he'd just sleep in our house. And my mother didn't like when my father would drink. And they fought a lot, which I would have not much to do with since I was just a 5-year-old kid, so I just thought it was normal. But I would also wonder why my friends' parents aren't fighting like my parents. But anyway, I was just gaming on my PSP in the other room while they were fighting. Soon my mother started taking me to the park more often, which she wouldn't do unless there was a special occasion of sort. And Kishan started showing up there as well with his boys. And I just always thought it was a coincidence, because I was a 6-year-old kid by that point, and my mother and father started fighting more and more, and one day, it got way out of control that my father actually got physical in the fight. All this while my mother was the one hitting him, while he was sticking to just screaming, but he pushes her into the other room and locked her in, and then he started banging the door to the room I was in with my cousin who had come to stay for a few days. And he pulled me out of the room and locked her in there. And he took a knot and he told me to watch as he took his own life. But I managed to open the door to my mother's room and my father's sister came to visit us unknowingly at the same time, so my father got down and he got on his bike and he drove off somewhere and didn't come back, and after he left, Kishan started to come and sleep in our house in our bed, in which me, my mother, and my father all slept together. And soon things started to get bad because I was used to sleeping between my mother and father. But then he started demanding I sleep on the edge on the other side, and I fell off the bed a lot because I wasn't used to sleeping on the edge. So my mother got a cot, which is like a portable bed for me to sleep on, but Kishan didn't like me sleeping on it as well, and so I was sleeping on the floor while they slept on the bed. And soon he didn't want me in the bedroom at all, so I got to sleeping in the other bedroom. But then my mother sold that bed since it was bought by my father and she didn't want it in the house. So now I was sleeping in the living room couch for a long time, and even me going to the toilet was a problem because we had 3 toilets in the house. 2 were on the outside, and 1 was inside, and the inside one was in their bedroom. And at night I would often be very scared to go out, and I tried to sneak into their bedroom to go to the toilet, and my mother caught me and she slapped me and told me to go to the other toilet. Those weren't the only problems though, because even eating was a struggle. There were some things that I loved to eat and Kishan knew what those were, so he'd eat while I was playing outside. And I'd have barely anything left to eat. Imagine eating away and not leaving anything for a 7-year-old kid. Things were tough, but they were tough with my studies as well. Because while my father was still there, he wouldn't force me to study much as long as I did my homework, and he helped me do it every time I came back home from school. And then he'll let me play with my PSP for as long as I wanted, but my mother or Kishan wouldn't help me, so I had no one to help me, so I stopped doing my homework. And I was getting bad grades. My mother started getting more furious with me about it. And at that time, I was just getting too overwhelmed with stuff that I tried ending my life many times, but seeing how I was scared of even walking around my own house, I started spending more time at my friend's house instead. And I would even eat at their house because there wouldn't be enough for me at home anyway. It may not sound like a big deal, but it actually is, because I'm from India. And during that time when I was around 8 years old, eating at a neighbor's house was very insulting of your own parents, indicating they don't feed you enough, which may be true in my case, but it was still very insulting, although my friend's parents didn't mind it. Once my mother caught me at their house eating, and she took me back home and started beating me while saying every cuss word in the book. I endured everything. And then I was in 3rd grade, but I once again tried to end it all. I don't know how extreme it is for a 10-year-old, because while going through that experience, I thought maybe this is all just normal. But then again, why wasn't anything like this happening with my friend who lived next door? His parents were also fighting, but those were more like play fighting, calling each other names like a fat cat and a skinny dog. I decided to live a little before I do what I should have done a long ago. The same thing my father tried to do that day in front of me. The next day I went to school. There was a new student in the school, and she was behind her work since she joined the school 1 month late, and that day was her 4th day in school, and one of the teacher was punishing everyone who hadn't finished their work, and the teacher was new too and didn't know that the girl just got here 4 days ago, and she was shy and silent as well, just like me. And since I wasn't finishing any of my work either, she punished us to sit outside of class and finish our books. There were lots of kids outside, but it didn't take long for everyone to finish their work and go back inside. All the boys had left, and I was the only one left behind, and the new girl was also sitting there with another girl. And soon it was time for lunch. The teacher told us we can eat lunch, but we must stay where we are. We can't go to the grounds, and the new girl saw me eating alone and invited me to have lunch with her, and I refused because I wasn't the type of kid who would talk to girls. So she stood up and she came to my side and dragged me to her side, and I was forced to have lunch with them, but we started chatting and we became good friends, although we had just met. But the moment she started dragging me while laughing, I thought she was gonna make fun of me or something. But while talking to her, I just started falling in love with her slowly but surely, and she never once made me feel like anything was wrong. And from that day I changed my decision of wanting to end everything, but I still couldn't propose to her or anything, since this is India after all. If I proposed to her, it'd mean I'll never even see her face ever again. I can't explain it in much details, but in India you can't be in a relationship in your school days during that time. But all I knew was that girl saved my life that day, and no matter how bad the things got for me at home, I continued to live through it, although there came one day where my life was almost done. For you see, my mother had sent me to her sister's house in Mumbai for vacation. And coincidentally, my other two aunts also came there with their daughters, and everything was going okay until there were only a few days left to get back, and my aunts all surrounded me in the living room and they asked me stuff about my mother and Kishan. Because my mother still hadn't married Kishan and Kishan was still sneaking into our house from his wife and kids, and somehow my aunts found out about their relationship, and they started asking me questions. I knew I couldn't answer those questions. But then they pulled out scissors and they held my hands and yanked off my clothes, and they said they'll cut it if I don't tell them everything, and I told them everything I knew. And then they let me go. While I was in the other room playing on my PSP, I heard my aunts called my mother, and they not only told her everything they forced me to say, they added some things of their own to it, as well, saying stuff like, "Your son also told us you get on top of Kishan and jump while screaming," and many sexual things which I obviously did not say, because I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. I was just 10 years old still, and after hearing all that, I panicked and I tried everything I could. Although I was almost 500 km away from my mother, I still did everything I could to hide. I went inside the wardrobe and closed it shut, and I even stopped breathing. My cousins saw it since they were in the room as well. And when my aunts came to look for me, my cousins told them I'm in the wardrobe, and I was crying so much my clothes were completely wet from tears that should have been a clear indication to them what my mother would do to me, and they assured me that they didn't call my mother at all, they were just joking. And I got their joke. When I actually got back home, I saw my mother sitting in the living room with all the kitchen utensils which can be used for beating. And she even had a knife amongst them and a bottle of kerosene, and one of my aunt had come home to drop me off, and she saw everything that my mother had, and she just started giggling after seeing all the preparations for a murder. I sat in front of my mother, and my aunt came running inside and said something in my mother's ear, and then she ran off outside, got into her cab and went home, and she was running while giggling as well. My mother then told me to close the door, and as soon as I did, I can't explain what she did to me, and I don't even want to go into details. But after 2 hours of both physical and mental torture, my mother stripped me naked, and she literally picked me up and threw me out of the house and told me to run off. It was early in the morning and everyone was sleeping, so nobody saw me running around naked, except one kid who woke up early, and he was younger than me. He knew it's not the time to laugh at me, and he showed concern. I still can't explain the embarrassment of a 10-year-old getting sympathy from a 5-year-old. And just then my mother called for me and called me back. And then the same thing began for another 6 hours, and she told me not to call her mother again, and she stopped talking to me, and she would just toss me the food like I was a criminal in a cell. After almost a year, she calmed down because another aunt came to the house, and she explained that the other two were threatening him to spill the beans, and it's not my fault and stuff like that, as if I don't remember who was holding the scissors to my fucking D number K. But I didn't intervene because my friends were also outside listening to everything, and I didn't want them to listen to the part where my D number K was on the line. But anyway, the abuse didn't stop. It only got worse from there, and a lot of things happened, like my broke the only high-end phone I had, which was a gift from my father. And she did that for no reason. One day I got home from school and she just started to scream at me, and she broke my phone, and then she beat me. One day she had a fight with Kishan, and it was at some neighbor's house, and I was home alone. My mother rushed home, so I opened the door because we were on some good terms for that specific morning, and as soon as I opened the door, she beat me while the neighbor girl tried to stop her, and then she threw me down the stairs, and she dragged me to the neighbor's house where Kishan was sitting, and she threw me at him and told him to kill me if I am that much of a problem. And also one day, I remember very clearly because of this scar on my forehead, which still remains because my mother threw a knife at me. And I don't know the reason, but all I think is that it was just my birthday and I was having more fun than I deserve, and now we get to the day she abandoned me, which also happens to be on my 15th birthday, May 27, 2019. But before that, I have some other sad news, because a few years before that, the girl who I was in love with started hating on me because of one kid who started spreading fake rumors about me, and those were some nasty rumors. Although she was hating on me, I never stopped loving her. And by never, I mean I still love her, but sadly our school was limited to 8th grade, and all of us students had to move to another school, and I couldn't get her contact info. And she doesn't even have any because her parents wouldn't allow her to have a phone. I still search her name on social media every day. But no matter what I do, I can't find her. It's been almost 6 years since I last saw her beautiful face. But let's get back to my mother abandoning me. Well, just 6 days before my birthday, she had another son. She had the puppy of Kishan. And in India, the naming ceremony is held 6 days after birth, so his naming ceremony was on my birthday, and in the naming ceremony, it is important to have a big feast, and all in there needs to be lots of decorations. And I was wearing my old shorts and t-shirt for the entire day. And I was getting most of the things ready for people, only to find out that there is no new outfit for me to wear. One of my uncle took me to the store 3 hours before the celebration and got me a t-shirt which I had to wear with my old pants. And then I was waiting for my cake to celebrate my birthday, but turns out my mother didn't even get a cake. One of my neighbor bought the cake for me. She was planning on having 2 cakes for my birthday. She thought my mother would definitely have bought a chocolate cake. So she bought a strawberry cake, and I saw her face turn sad when she heard my mother didn't buy any cake at all. But I didn't mind it in the moment. I thought she's just tired. She just gave birth 6 days ago, and I was understanding her. But before cutting the cake, I sent my friend to get my mother so that we can cut the cake, because I don't know how to. Even though I was 15, my mother just never taught me anything. But she refused to come, and I waited for a while and sent him again. And my mother told him to cut the fucking cake or throw it away and not disturb her and the little angel, and so my friend helped me cut the cake. It was the same friend whose house I used to eat at. And then my mother called me upstairs and she slapped me and told me to back everything and leave. The next day she didn't tell me where or anything. And the next day she didn't let me make instant noodles, since she never made breakfast for me, and I was only eating instant noodles for breakfast for the past 8 or 9 years. I don't even remember at this point. And then my aunt showed up and she took me and left me at my father's sister's house and left BTW. This was the same giggling aunt who whispered something into my mother's ear. And then I was forced to live with my father, but he couldn't raise me, so he sent me to his mother, who was like 95 years old. And he got me enrolled into a school near her house, which isn't in the best place in the world. And the very first day I went to the school, I saw the boy who spread fake rumors about me in the previous school. I was not good in schools, as you can probably tell with my broken English. But I stopped going to the school at all because I wanted to focus on YouTube. I just needed a good device, since my phone at the time was a very shitty one and I had no PC or laptop. I tried to make content, but I couldn't, and my father didn't mind me quitting school because he knows YouTube isn't a bad choice. And he had seen a bit of my editing skills. Because I made a few videos from the phone he bought me that my mother broke, I couldn't focus on my channel at all until the last 6 months. I finally started making videos again, and I got my channel monetized. And I got $30 from YouTube so far, but I do hope I'll get more soon, because as my current situation stands, my father's business went bankrupt right after I was sent to him, and he'd been living by asking for money from his partners. And he is currently working on some antique stuff, which I don't know much about, but he isn't getting anything big or real yet, so we're living on the edge. And he got scammed by one of his sisters. And he lost the only house he had, so we're on the verge of going homeless. Luckily, the person she sold the house to is a neighbor, so he's letting us stay if we pay him rent, although it is hard for us. And my father is falling more into debt to pay him the rent every month. My father won't let me have a job, and I also can't get one because everything requires a vehicle. And we don't have one. I haven't received any actual money from YouTube yet because I'm not getting many views as a small channel right now. But I hope any one of my future video gets lots of views, enough for me to settle everything right. And since we're in India, $200 a month would still be enough if I can pull that much off from YouTube, but that is very hard because of the way my mother treated me. I have lots of self-doubt and low esteem that I can't even verbally speak in my videos. And I have to use text-to-speech to make God of War theories. My life wasn't any good by coming here to my father either, and I will make a second post about it soon. But for now I need to go to sleep, since it is almost morning as I'm writing this, and I am tired after my current editing session. I really hope for your support in the comments, and your advice will be very useful to me. I will respond to everyone. Thank you, and may God bless you.